Something was wrong. I hadn't even stepped 2 feet inside, but I could feel it. Like the air inside my cabin had shifted in ways I couldn't explain. You know how sometimes you come back from a trip and the house just feels different? Not dusty or disheveled, just off. Like someone pressed rewind on your life and recorded over it with something else. I stood at the threshold of my lakeside cabin, suitcase still in hand. Keys barely dangling from the door lock, and there she was. A woman in pink silk pajamas, sitting at my kitchen island, eating my sandwich, my turkey sandwich, and sipping coffee from my favorite mug, the one with the tiny chip near the handle. Her lipstick marked the rim like a signature I didn't ask for. She looked at me deadpan, calm, unbothered. Then she said the words that knocked the breath right out of my chest. "Can I help you? What are you doing in my house?" I blinked, once, twice, my ears rang in disbelief. But my voice came out even. "I live here. My name's Cal Langford. This is my home." She didn't flinch, just wiped the corner of her mouth with a napkin, folded it neatly and said, "That's impossible. I bought this house last week. You're trespassing." And then she dialed 911. I wish I could tell you I laughed. That I thought it was some strange prank gone wrong, but no, she pressed the phone to her ear, looked me straight in the eye, and began her performance. "Yes, hello? There's a man in my home. He broke in. I'm scared. He's threatening me." By the time the police arrived, 7 minutes later, I was in handcuffs, sitting on the edge of my own damn couch, with an officer named Garza eyeing me like I just crawled through the window with a crowbar. Let me rewind for a second. 3 weeks ago, I left for a business trip, nothing major, just a few client meetings in Houston. I plan to return Sunday, quietly, alone. I live a remote life by design, work from home tech contractor turned part-time real estate security consultant. Depending on how boring the week is, I'd bought this lakeside cabin in Willow Glen, Texas, to unplug, recharge, and be away from people. No roommates, no family close by, just peace. Only person I trusted enough to even peek at the place while I was gone was Lou Franklin, my retired firefighter neighbor who treats neighborhood watch like a sacred duty. Lou's solid, doesn't gossip, doesn't miss a detail. That Friday, in the middle of a Zoom call, my phone buzzed. Lou's text was short, clipped, and enough to spike my blood pressure. "Cow. Just saw Marlene from Elmwood Circle showing your house to some guy in a suit. Thought you were out of town." I stared at the message. Reread it. Lou doesn't joke. He doesn't assume. If Lou says someone walked into your house with keys, you'd better believe it. I called him fast. He told me she'd walked in like she owned the place. Was pointing at rooms, talking square footage. The guy had a clipboard, took photos. I didn't even answer him, just changed my flight. Quietly, Saturday return, no warning. I wanted to walk in and catch the truth red-handed. So when I pulled up the next day around 3 p.m., I parked across the street. Out of sight, my driveway was already taken, a silver Honda Civic, vanity plate Marlowe. Lights on inside, curtains drawn back, music playing softly. I saw the shadow before I reached the porch. That's when the world cracked open inside. She had set up camp, groceries on the counter, her laptop open on my dining table, slippers on her feet, a lavender candle flickering on the mantel like some Hallmark ad from hell. And that sandwich, my sandwich, now missing one bite. What stunned me wasn't the invasion. It was the confidence, the casual entitlement, like I was the one disrupting her Sunday. After she called 911, she actually had the gall to tell the officer she had purchased papers. A manila folder appeared from her tote. Loose sheets printed on cheap paper with a fake signature, no stamp, no seal, nothing official. Garza asked me for proof. I showed my ID. He asked for a utility bill. I didn't have one. Who carries paper bills anymore? Everything's auto-pay now, but my toothbrush was still in the bathroom. My clothes still hung in the closet, my dog's ashes in the ceramic urn on the bookshelf, untouched. Then she pulled out her phone, a Zillow listing. My house. Photos I never posted. My bedroom, my office, even my hidden vinyl drawer. The listing read, $229,000, motivated seller. Needs quick close, owner relocating for personal reasons. I locked eyes with her and asked, "Where'd you get those photos?" She smirked. "You left the place unlocked." I hadn't. I lock everything. That's when I knew she either picked the lock or hired someone who could. And that's when Lou burst in, red-faced, iPad in hand. "Officer," he barked, "you'll want to see this footage from Lou's porch camera, time-stamped, clear. 3 days worth of Marlene sneaking around, whispering to a locksmith, carrying boxes, even throwing herself a little wine and cheese welcome party on my deck Friday night." I watched Garza's eyes harden as he stared at the screen. "Marlene?" She backpedaled like a cornered raccoon. "He's lying. The footage could be edited. I had a right to enter. The HOA says." I cut her off. "What HOA?" She blinked. "Well, technically, The community guidelines for abandoned properties, Garza's voice dropped. 5 days does not make a property abandoned. He called the HOA office on speaker. They confirmed no such rule existed. No rights granted. No listings allowed without notarized seller approval. And then, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Cal, listen, man. We didn't want it to go down like this. She jumped the timeline. I told her to wait. Who is this? This is Vince Halbert. I'm sort of her business partner. I froze. Garza gestured. I put it on speaker. We've been identifying underutilized properties. Vacation homes, absentee owners, you fit the profile. Marlene was supposed to establish squatters' rights, then we'd make you a cash offer. You couldn't refuse. The silence in that room was heavy, and what Garza said next made my skin crawl. Mr. Halbert, you've just admitted to conspiracy and attempted fraud. You'll want to turn yourself in. You ever realize mid-conversation that your life just split in two? The part that came before that phone call, and the one you'll never forget afterward? Garza hit record on his phone before Vince could finish another word. Mr. Halbert, you understand you're admitting to criminal conspiracy, right? Vince paused. You could almost hear him realizing, too late, that he wasn't talking to the scared homeowner he thought he could bully into silence. Look, Vince said, his voice shifting, more measured now, like he was playing chess and just realized he was already 4 moves behind. This doesn't need to get messy. We're willing to offer a settlement above market. We've got cash. You don't need to involve the authorities. We've done this before. People are happy to walk away. Garza leaned in, his expression granite. Mr. Halbert, where are you calling from? Vince hesitated. I'm in Austin, but I can be there in 2 hours. Let's talk this out, man to man. No, Garza replied calmly. You come here, and when you do, you walk into the front lobby alone. Bring everything. If you don't, we'll come find you. That moment hung in the room like a hammer suspended above glass. Vince didn't answer. The line went dead. I stood there in my own living room, the scent of someone else's candle still drifting in the air, wondering how long I'd been under surveillance. How many mornings I'd sat on that deck sipping coffee while someone, somewhere, was taking notes on when I left. When I returned, when I turned off the lights, Marlene was silent now. She'd shrunk somehow, no longer the silk pajama queen of my kitchen, but a woman whose armor was cracking by the second. I didn't mean for it to go like this, she mumbled, but I wasn't ready to hear that. Not yet, maybe not ever. She wasn't just in my house. She had planned to sell it to strangers, to pocket the cash and move on like it was just another line on her resume. Garza moved quickly after that. He ordered 2 officers to escort Marlene outside. They didn't cuff her yet, not in front of the neighbors, but it was clear she wasn't free. Not anymore. Lou stood next to me, arms folded across his chest, eyes locked on the car as it pulled away. You good? He asked, voice low. I don't know, I said. I don't even know what this is yet. He nodded, slow. Well, you're not alone in it anymore. An hour later, Vince showed up. I half expected him to look like a slick suit, some polished scam artist with cologne and charm. But he didn't. He looked normal, business casual, slightly balding, a cardboard box in hand like he was dropping off tax forms. He smiled as he walked into the precinct, like it was just another appointment. Garza didn't smile back. They took Vince into a back room. The next 3 hours were a blur. Forms, interviews, evidence logs. Turns out, the box Vince brought wasn't a peace offering. It was proof of everything. Photos, notes, printed spreadsheets, color-coded files on homeowners. People like me, remote workers, snowbirds, recently divorced, deceased spouses. Anyone whose house looked like it might sit empty for a few days. Too long. They had scoped out 12 properties across the state, 3 already flipped. One man, a widower in his 70s, had been manipulated into signing over his deed for a fake moving assistance deal. Another was pressured into accepting cash after a sudden storm damaged his supposedly vacant home. Vince and Marlene had a full system. They called it soft flipping. Disgusting. When Garza asked Vince how long they'd been watching me, he answered like he was reading out a grocery list. About 4 months. You were a dream profile, no kids, no nearby relatives, no security system until recently. You lock up but don't have a dog. You work remote but travel twice a quarter. You post landscape photos, not selfies. Less community involvement, more isolation. Perfect. That word echoed in my head. Perfect. It didn't mean I'd done anything wrong, but it meant I had made it easy. My silence, my solitude, they weren't just lifestyle choices. They were vulnerabilities. Vince talked like it was all business, like I should have been flattered. He even had a file labeled Langford Plan B, which included options in case I caught on early. One of them was bribing me, another was claiming squatters' rights, the third was worse. Set him up as an aggressor, used the home alone female angle. Law favors perceived vulnerability. Garza read that line out loud, then slid the folder across the table, disgusted. That was their strategy. Marlene plays the victim. I become the villain, and the house, well, it's just real estate. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my deck long past midnight, listening to the crickets, the wind, the gentle ripple of Lake Juneau, and tried to feel something like normal. But it wasn't normal. Not anymore, because someone had taken my life, my peace, and tried to turn it into a transaction. 2 weeks passed. Marlene took a plea deal, probation, restitution, and a lifetime ban from the county. Vince, he wasn't so lucky. The files in that cardboard box were enough for a full case. He got 18 months, not enough, if you ask me, but enough to make a point. In the aftermath, the neighborhood changed. We started talking more. People shared their stories, their fears. One woman on Maple admitted she'd seen someone on her porch 2 months ago but thought it was just delivery. Mix up. Another guy found photos of his house, the exact angles Vince had used, posted online in a private investment group. So we organized. Lou became our unofficial sheriff. We set up a shared camera network, weekly check-ins, quiet vigilance. Something shifted, not just in security but in how we saw each other. Maybe that was the only good thing that came out of it, but even then I couldn't forget. About a month after everything settled down, I got a call, blocked number. I let it ring once, twice. Curiosity 1, hello? There was a pause, then a shaky voice. Cal, it's Marlene from County. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I needed to say something. I didn't answer, just listened. I didn't plan to hurt anyone. She said, I lost everything last year. Job, apartment, family stopped talking to me. Vince found me at a seminar, said he could teach me how to flip homes without credit. Said it was legal if the house was vacant long enough. Did you really believe that? I wanted to, she whispered. I thought maybe the world had different rules for people like me, desperate ones. There was another silence. She didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't beg, she just sighed. I saw your dog's ashes, she said, and your vinyls. I knew you lived there, but I thought maybe if I sold it fast enough, you'd just move on. I hung up. Not out of anger, but because I didn't know what to say. Sympathy? Maybe, but sympathy doesn't mean trust, and it sure as hell doesn't mean justice. Some wounds don't bleed, they echo. But here's what I know now. Your home isn't just walls and locks. It's your sanctuary, your history, the place your memories live. And people like Vince and Marlene, they don't just steal square footage, they steal peace, dignity, safety. You don't always see it coming, but when you do, you fight not just for yourself, but for everyone like you. You ever stand in your own home and feel like a guest? That's what it felt like for weeks after. I'd walk into the kitchen and half expect to see her again. Not because I thought she'd come back, but because part of me still hadn't convinced the rest that it was real. That a woman I'd never met had slipped so easily into the life I built. Left her perfume in the air, her fingerprints on the fridge handle, her voice on the walls. I started locking everything twice. Door, windows, gate. I bought motion lights, changed passwords, even installed a hidden cam in the birdhouse out front. Not because I expected another break-in, but because trust doesn't rebuild itself overnight. Especially not after it's been gutted. With a smile. And still, there were moments where I'd be brushing my teeth and suddenly remember how she sat at my counter like she belonged there. Or I'd open the fridge and remember that sandwich, mine, untouched before I left, casually half-eaten like a scene from some twisted domestic movie I never agreed to star in. I thought about selling the place more than once, starting over, finding a new quiet corner of the world. But every time I sat down to list it, I'd look out at Lake Juneau, watch the way the sun hit the water just right around 6:30, and I'd feel it, that tug, that knowing this wasn't just a house, it was the place I chose to heal, to build, to be left alone in peace. And no one was going to take that from me, not with silk pajamas, not with Zillow listings, not with crocodile tears over county jail phones. So I stayed, and instead of running, I started paying attention. It's wild what you start to notice when your eyes are open. Not just security flaws or routines, but people, the ones who watch, the ones who don't, the ones who wave, the ones who always seem to look away. Lou and I started walking the neighborhood twice a week, nothing official, no clipboards, just observation and conversation. The first time, a woman named Clara opened her door before we could even knock. She was shaking. Said she'd seen someone looking through her garden window 2 weeks ago. Thought it was a hallucination. Blamed her medication. We checked her camera. It wasn't a hallucination. It was Vince. Same jacket, same smirk, same clipboard. He'd been there, scoping, measuring risk. Probably writing her off as to high maintenance or not isolated enough, but still, he'd tried. Clara started crying. Not out of fear, but relief. She wasn't crazy. Then there was Darren, 3 doors down from me. always seemed distant. Tech guy like me, never saw him at any of the old HOA meetings. He didn't even know there'd been an arrest. But when I showed him Vince's file, the map with pushpins and notes about vacation habits, his face drained. His house was marked .red. Target for Q2, it read. We found that same note on 6 other homes, some with annotations about travel. One had a sticky note that read, check when daughter leaves for college, window opens September. Chills every time. This wasn't two criminals playing real estate roulette, it was a blueprint. A system built on silence and timing. That's when I knew this wasn't just about me, and neither was the recovery. We formed a group. No formal name, just neighbors who'd had enough. We met every Sunday evening under Lou's carport. Brought lawn chairs, coffee, sometimes chili. We started sharing. Turns out almost everyone had a story. Karen on Shady Oak had a weird locksmith show up by accident last fall, said he was scheduled to rekey the house. She turned him away, but didn't think much of it. Tommy across the lake got a flyer once offering to buy fast for cash. No inspection needed. It was tucked under his door, but not his neighbor's. Personal, targeted, over time. The pieces formed a picture, a quiet, creeping industry built on loneliness, disconnection, assumption. If they think no one's looking, they strike. So we made it our job to look. We got local officers to attend one of our meetings, showed them everything. The files, the charts, the camera footage, Clara's garden window. The whole map. Vince left behind like breadcrumbs for karma, and they listened. By November, we had coordinated neighborhood-wide camera registration. Not surveillance, just awareness. We encouraged people to know their neighbors, to wave, to knock on a door if something felt off instead of just pulling the curtain shut. What started as a violation became a movement, and somehow that movement healed me more than any courtroom sentence ever could. But still, the question stayed. Not about Vince, he was a sociopath with a business plan, but about Marlene. She had cried. She had looked scared. She had tried badly to play both sides, and somewhere in all that chaos, I started to wonder, was she truly broken, or just broken enough to say yes? What do you do with someone like that? Is redemption a right? Or a privilege? The county said her deal included restitution. That meant a check. A repayment of what she'd cost me, from legal fees to emotional damage. It wasn't much. Barely $4,000, but when I opened that envelope, I didn't feel relief. I felt insulted. As if a number, typed, printed, endorsed, could ever pay back the months of unease. The doubt. The loss of safety in my own skin. So I didn't cash it. I taped it to the inside of my closet door. Let it hang there as a reminder, not of what I lost, but of what I almost did. Because that's the part no one talks about. When someone invades your home, they don't just take what's in your drawers. They take the version of you that believed the world left you alone. They steal your innocence, your pause before you leave, your trust in silence. But they also teach you that you're not as isolated as you thought. That good neighbors exist, and sometimes live right next door with a retired fire hat and a heart too big to stay quiet. Teach you that community is not built in comfort, but in defense. Teach you that you fight not just because they came for you, but because they might come for someone else next. You ever get a knock on the door that makes your stomach turn before you even open it? It was 3 months after everything. The leaves around Lake Juneau had started to brown. The evenings had that cold snap warning you that winter was loading just behind the trees, and I had finally started sleeping through the night again. Then came the knock. To short raps, not frantic, not polite, just assertive. I opened the door, and there stood a man I'd never seen before. Khakis, collared shirt, clipboard in hand, sunglasses still on despite the cloud cover. I didn't say anything, I just stared. Afternoon, he said, voice even. Sorry to bother you. I'm with Horizon Equity. We're looking to make offers on homes in the Willow Glen area. Just wondering if you might be interested in selling. I almost laughed. Horizon Equity. Of course, he handed me a glossy one sheet with my address typed in bold at the top, my name, a speculative price, a QR code that linked to a mock-up listing with bright photos taken from the lake. Drone angle. Photos I never took. Where'd you get these? I asked. He smiled like I'd just asked for the weather. We have a team. We're always scouting. That's when it hit me. This wasn't over. Maybe Vince and Marlene were gone, but the system, the game, was still out there, playing the same notes, wearing different faces. I asked him one question. Do you know a man named Vince Halbert? He paused. It was quick. Barely a flicker in the corners of his eyes, but it was there. Nope, doesn't ring a bell. And then he left, calm, smiling. By the time I walked to the end of the driveway, his car was already out of sight. I brought the flyer inside, scanned every word, same buzzwords. Motivated owner, quick close, no inspection required, great. Second home potential. They weren't just preying on isolated homeowners. They were scripting our lives before we even realized we were characters in their plan. I called Lou. By the time I finished explaining, he was already loading his truck. We drove around for hours that night, not patrolling, investigating, checking driveways for parked cars that didn't belong, noticing porch lights left on past midnight. Cataloging flyers, some houses had 3 or 4 crammed under the doormat like spam. It was happening again, different company, different method, but the same predator instincts, target the quiet ones. The ones who didn't speak up last time, the ones still a little too polite to say, "Get off my property before I call the cops," so I did something I never thought I'd do. I stood up at the next community meeting and said it out loud, "They're still out there. New names, new logos, but the same scam, and they're counting on us being too busy, too tired, or too nice to notice." And for the first time, no one rolled their eyes, not the retirees in the back, not the young couple with the twins, not even the woman from the far end of the lake who hadn't spoken since her husband passed. Everyone had seen something, felt something, they just didn't know how to name it until someone else said it first. So we formed what we now call the Lakeside Lockstep. No official status, no funding, just neighbors committed to watching out for each other and keeping our community off someone else's hit list. We met weekly. Exchanged security tips, created a private group chat, installed shared cameras on entry points. One guy, Marcos, worked in cybersecurity. He set up digital alerts for new Zillow listings that matched our homes. We started tracking suspicious real estate flyers and reporting unlicensed solicitations, and then it happened one night. Clara, the woman with the garden window, got a ping, a new listing. No address, but the photos were unmistakable. It was her house. Old shots taken before she'd replaced her porch swing, before her dog passed. The listing was anonymous. No agent name, just a burner email and a suspiciously vague company, Western View Holdings. I took a screenshot and ran it through a metadata reader. One of the images was traced back to a Dropbox folder owned by a T. Halbert, Vince's brother. Or cousin, or protege, we didn't know, not yet. But it was the same family, the same scam, rising from the ashes like a snake in a new skin. Garza was still my contact at the precinct. I sent him everything. By the end of the week, Clara's listing was pulled, quietly, no explanation. But 2 more popped up a few towns over. That's when I realized something chilling. This was never just about us. It was bigger. They were running this game all over the state. Maybe beyond, changing names, rotating players, but keeping the core playbook intact. I sat on my dock that night, staring at the water. Not afraid, not anymore, but angry. Because we were playing defense, and they were already 5 moves ahead. So I made a decision. I took a job, a part-time role with a private real estate compliance group that partners with law enforcement to track fraud. Not glamorous, not loud, but powerful. I started reviewing complaints, looking for patterns, flagging listings. I worked quietly, precisely like surgery, because someone had to. Someone had to stop these predators before they turned another sanctuary into a sales pitch. I never thought I'd care about HOA rules, or property rights, or surveillance zones. But when someone tries to sell your life out from under you, you start caring real fast. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being a victim. I became a guardian. You ever dream of something that already happened, but your brain twists it just enough to feel worse? In my dream, I'm sitting on the couch. Same cabin, same lake, lights streaming in through the back windows, but this time, I can't move. I'm frozen, watching myself, and there she is again. Marlene. But it's not her smile that hits me this time, it's what she's carrying, my vinyl collection. Stacked high. Her arms wobble, her nails painted like the first day I saw her. And she's humming some off-key tune. She walks right past me, out the front door. Like I was never there. That's when I wake up. Cold, heart pounding, back damp with sweat. No sounds in the cabin but the hum of the fridge and the ticking wall clock Lee gave me last Christmas. I sit up, shake it off, tell myself it's just leftovers, trauma echoes, maybe. But it doesn't stop the question from crawling back every night. What if they come back? Not Marlene, not Vince. But people like them, wearing different faces, carrying different names, playing the same game. And the deeper I got into my work with the real estate compliance group, the more I realized they already had. I'd been flagging listings for a few weeks when a new file crossed my screen. Ordinary complaint, fake listing, house owner claimed they'd never spoken to any agent. Photos looked real, nothing too loud, but the property, it wasn't in Texas. It was in Oregon. A lakeside cabin, nearly identical to mine. Same deck layout, same pine line drive. Even the same crooked porch lantern hanging too low beside the door. That was the moment it hit me. They weren't just copying strategies, they were copying patterns. Finding carbon copies of properties across the country matching isolation levels, owner profiles, even interior staging, then cycling the con again with local recruits. Franchising crime, and the worst part? Most victims still didn't press charges, too embarrassed, too confused, too tired to fight a system that didn't see home invasion as real unless a window was broken. Or someone had a weapon, but what do you call it when someone lives in your skin and tries to sell it before you come back? That's a weapon. It just doesn't bleed. One night, while reviewing flagged domains from fraudulent listings, I saw a familiar name buried in a fake company registry, Marlin Dreams Inc. No site, no content. Just a name, a ghost domain linked to a burner phone and a PO box in Kansas. I sat there staring at it for 10 full minutes. She was still in it, still playing. Somewhere between fraud and fiction, she was trying to build again, or worse. She already had. I didn't tell Lou right away, didn't want to see that fury in his eyes again. The one he wore when he saw those camera clips of her first night on my porch. Toasting to a conquest she hadn't even stolen yet, but it ate at me. Not just that she was still active, but that a part of me had once, even for a second, felt sorry for her. I thought about her tears, her story about losing her job, about Vince manipulating her, and now here she was, building a digital shell company, setting the table for another lie. So I sent a tip, quietly, no announcement. Just a quiet flag to federal fraud enforcement. Then I waited. 2 days later, I got a call from a blocked number. I didn't pick up. An hour after that, I got an email, subject line, "You still think you're the hero?" There was no body text, just a photo attachment. It was a picture of me, taken from across the lake, from the opposite shore. Telephoto lens. I was in my kayak, alone, paddling back at sunset. That's when the fear changed shape. This wasn't just old enemies reactivating, this was someone watching now, someone new. They knew who I was, where I lived, that I turned this story into action, and that I was interfering with their operation. I forwarded the photo to Garza. He called immediately. "You recognize the shoreline?" "Yeah," I said, "but that's private property over there, the edge of Hartman Grove. Most of it's undeveloped. You ever lease your property image to anyone? Travel blogs? Social media?" "No," I said, "never." And that photo wasn't online. That was taken live. Silence. Then Garza sighed. "They're retaliating." That night, I installed 2 more cameras, and I didn't sleep again for days. But fear wasn't the only thing that woke up in me. It was fire. I wasn't going to run. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let them rebuild the game I helped take down, not in my backyard, and not anywhere else either. So I dug in deeper. Started pulling property tax rolls, ownership histories, rental license applications, anything that looked odd, and that's when I found something that made my stomach turn again. A rental application submitted under the name Langford, Carl. Not Cal Langford, but just close enough to pass a quick scan, submitted to a short-term property platform under a shell management company based in Nevada. With 1 property listed. Mine. Same photos from the first fake Zillow listing. Same motivated seller blurb. This wasn't just a clone of a scam. This was identity theft. They weren't just selling homes that didn't belong to them. They were becoming the homeowners, becoming me. That was when I realized something vital. This wasn't about houses anymore. It was about erasure. Erasing people who live quiet lives, who keep their heads down, who don't have big families or watchdog organizations, or loud voices in city council. They prey on the quiet because silence is profitable, but not this time. Not here. You ever catch yourself staring at your own name and not recognizing it? That's what happened the night I saw the fake rental listing in my name. Not Cal Langford, but Langford, Carl. Same photos. Same porch swing, same soft lighting through the kitchen window, a perfect replica of my world, filtered through someone else's lie. I clicked through every image like I was flipping pages in a nightmare scrapbook. That was my home, my sanctuary, my dock. Even my grandmother's quilt hanging off the living room chair, folded just like I left it. I hadn't just been watched, I'd been studied. They were impersonating me, digitally first, maybe physically next. Creating alternate versions of me in state filings, rental platforms, local records. Slowly chipping away at my real identity until one day, maybe I didn't own this home anymore. At least not on paper. I sent everything to Garza. He called back. In 20 minutes, no delay, no pleasantries. "We're dealing with a second-tier ring," he said. "Different faces, different states, but same operation tree. Could be connected to Vince's old crew. Or it could be copycats, but they're good, they're fast, and they've gotten smarter." How smart? "They know how to make you disappear without ever touching you." That sentence stuck with me. Because I'd always thought if someone came for me, I'd see them, hear them, feel the air shift like I did that day Marlene was in my kitchen. But this was like death by erasure. 1,000 quiet edits until the system forgets who you are and you have to convince it that you were ever real. Garza looped in a federal cyber fraud task force. They traced the fake listings metadata back to a server in Flagstaff, Arizona. From there, it rerouted through Panama. Anonymous shell corporations, blockade payment channels, laundered listings through foreign VPNs. This wasn't amateur anymore. And that meant I needed help. Not just law enforcement. Real world, boots on the ground backup. People who knew what to look for because they'd lived through it. I went back to Lou. And Lou called his cousin, Rena, a retired postal investigator with a memory like steel and zero tolerance for fake paperwork. She took one look at the forged ownership documents I'd collected and snorted, "Rookie stuff," she said. "But getting better. See here, they're spoofing registrar logos now. Even learned how to fake a barcode scan. Won't hold up in court. But it'll get past a lazy county clerk if the timing's right." She poured herself black coffee, no cream, no sugar. "Tell me again how you first found this." So I did, all of it. From the turkey sandwich in my kitchen to the email with a photo of me on the lake. From Vince's cardboard box to the flyer from Horizon Equity. From Marlene's lavender candle to the identity theft listing posted under my name. She nodded through all of it, then leaned forward. "You're not the target anymore." I blinked. "What? You're the test run, the beta. They already squeezed you. But now they're watching how you react. Every email, every flag, every legal motion. They're learning how the system pushes back. So they can adapt. And the picture of me, threat, maybe, or maybe it was just proof. They wanted you to know they're still ahead." I sat back, let it sink in. So this wasn't a fight over my house anymore. It was a trial run for a bigger playbook. And if I backed off now, they'd win, not just with me. With the next dozen people who looked like me, lived like me, trusted silence the way I once did. I couldn't let that happen. That's when I decided to go public. Not loudly, not dramatically, but precisely. I reached out to a local reporter named Shay Velasquez. She'd written a piece last year on elder abuse scams and had a reputation for never taking the easy angle. I told her everything, names, addresses, dates. I showed her the fake listing, the shell corporations, the pattern maps Vince had used, the photo of me taken from across the lake. She didn't blink. "Give me 3 weeks," she said, "and stay alive." I laughed. She didn't. She published her expose in mid-November. Front page of the Sunday Digital. Headline: "The New Real Estate Hustle, How Homeowners Are Being Digitally Erased." It went viral. Local news picked it up, then statewide, then national. Hundreds of emails poured in, stories just like mine. People whose homes were accidentally listed, whose locks had been changed while they were on vacation, whose identities were slightly rewritten. One letter, one digit, one login at a time, until no one knew who actually owned what anymore. The FBI launched a formal investigation 2 days later. And that's when I started getting messages, not threats. Gratitude. From strangers. One woman wrote, "They tried this on my grandmother. We thought she was confused, but she wasn't." Another, "I didn't think anyone would believe me, but your story made my husband listen." And another, "I was this close to selling, thought it was a lucky offer, now I know better." That's when I realized they hadn't just tried to erase me, they'd awakened me. And in doing so, they'd created something stronger than fear. They'd created community, and not just in Willow Glen, but across counties, states, time zones, everywhere. Someone had once whispered, "I think something's wrong," and been told, "You're imagining things." They weren't imagining it, they were being targeted. And now they had names. Proof. And a man with a cabin and a very long memory who wasn't going to shut up anymore. Not for a settlement. Not for a threat, not for anyone. You ever feel like you were meant for something only after someone tried to take it from you? That's how I started feeling about the cabin, about this fight, about everything. Because before all this, before Marlene's silk pajamas, Vince's clipboard, and the picture from across the lake, I was just trying to be left alone. That was the whole reason I bought this place: peace, quiet, control over my own space. But now I saw the silence differently. It wasn't just comfort anymore. It was a weapon. The same quiet they used to target me, I could use to watch them back. By the time the FBI got involved, they'd traced at least 19 related shell companies across 5 states, each one designed to flip low-resistance homes, elderly owners, isolated remote workers, part-time residents. They found fake deeds, forged signatures, rental listings that turned into extortion schemes. Vince had been the spark, but he wasn't the flame, and Marlene, she wasn't gone either. I hadn't heard her voice since that phone call months ago. But when I gave Shay Velasquez the folder of names and dates, I saw her name come up again. Buried in a lease document for a vacant Arizona property, not as the tenant. As the agent. Different name, different email, but same writing style, same Half-truths and vague disclaimers. She was still out there, still working the same script. I stared at the name on that lease, Lena Drew, and felt something sharp in my chest. Not rage, not fear. Disappointment. There was a moment early on where I wondered if maybe she'd been manipulated, pushed into it, maybe even willing to change. But people who want to change don't rebrand the scam and move states, they reinvent the weapon. The truth was simple, she wasn't sorry. She was careful, she saw vulnerability as opportunity. I printed the lease, pinned it above my desk. A reminder that some people don't need forgiveness, they need stopping. That same week, the FBI confirmed that more than a third of the flagged fraudulent listings came from two IP hubs, one in Kansas and one just an hour from Lake Juneau. The route wasn't far. It was local. And worse, it was growing. One night, I got a text from Lou. No words. Just a photo. It was from one of our neighborhood cams. Time-stamped 3:12 a.m. A figure in a hoodie standing just outside my driveway, not approaching, not moving, just watching. The next image, snapped 3 seconds later, was blank. They'd moved too fast for the lens to catch. Again, I checked the footage myself, looked for every pixel of detail. But the resolution only showed one thing clearly. They knew where I lived. Still. Again, I showed it to Garza the next morning. He said what I already knew. They're warning you. Testing your edge. I didn't flinch. I just leaned back and said, then I hope they're watching closely because I don't blink anymore. We beefed up the cameras, hardened the perimeter. I started teaching self-defense courses every other Saturday, not to train soldiers, but to teach awareness, presence, intuition. Because when someone tries to sell your life without ever laying a finger on you, you learn real quick that your mind is the most valuable territory to protect. Meanwhile, Shay's story picked up momentum. She got invited to do a segment on national morning TV. The network wanted her to bring the homeowner behind the expose. She asked me. I said no, not because I was scared, but because I didn't want to become a headline. I wanted to stay a shadow. Because it's in the shadows where these people operate, and that's where they need to be hunted. But I did record a statement. Voice only. They played it at the end of the interview. My words echoed through millions of homes. What they steal isn't just your house. It's your stillness, your confidence. Your right to wake up in the place you built without questioning if it still belongs to you. Don't give them that. Fight, speak, even if your voice shakes. Because silence isn't safety, it's strategy. And it doesn't belong to them anymore. That recording got shared thousands of times. And every time I heard it, I barely recognized my own voice. Because the man who bought this cabin to disappear had become someone who refused to be unseen again. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about prevention. About making sure no one else woke up with a stranger eating their sandwich and selling their identity with a clipboard and a fake smile. But just when I thought I had seen everything, heard every twist this story could offer, I got one more surprise. It came in a letter. Handwritten, sloppy cursive. Postmarked from a halfway house in Kansas. Return address, Marlene Drew. Inside a single sheet. I know you hate me, you should. But someday, when they come for you again, and they will, look for the name Everton. That's where the next ones are hiding. That's all I can say. No apology, no signature, no plea. Just a warning. At first, I thought it was bait. Maybe even a trap. But curiosity always wins with me. I searched Everton. Not a person, a firm. Everton Holdings, LLC, newly registered, barely traceable, tied to 7 homes in 3 states. All with suspicious sales histories, and just like that, the game was back on. Only this time, I wasn't just the mark, I was the hunter. You ever realize the war wasn't about your house until long after the battle was over? That's how it felt, standing on my dock one morning, coffee in hand. The lake like glass beneath a slow, warming sky. Nothing moved, nothing threatened. But I couldn't shake the weight in my chest. Not fear, not even anger anymore, just awareness. A hyper-alertness that never quite goes back to sleep. I still live in the same cabin. Still have the same chipped mug. The same creaky step on the porch. The same view of the water that once felt like a retreat and now feels like a checkpoint. But everything around it and inside me has changed. Everton Holdings, the company Marlene warned me about, unraveled. Slowly, like all of them do. It started with one flagged property. A little fixer-upper in Arkansas, listed by an anonymous seller with no title chain, and ended with a digital paper trail, leading back to a holding firm in Belize. Classic misdirection, same tactics, different geography. The feds were already on it by the time I submitted my findings. Garza called me 2 weeks later. We flipped someone inside the ring, he said. Real name's Terrence Albright, mid-level, ran the documentation forge. He gave us everything. 12 arrests across 6 states, dozens of properties reclaimed. 6 families reunited with homes they were about to lose under legal pressure. It felt good. But it didn't feel over because for every scam shut down, another one waits, learning, rebranding, evolving, and people like me, people who choose solitude, who keep quiet, who live slow lives in forgotten towns will always be on someone's list. That's the truth I live with now, but I don't fear it, not anymore, because this story? It's not just mine. After Shay's story aired, something incredible happened. Survivors, people who'd once stayed silent, started speaking up. They shared names, patterns, listings, photos. The comment sections became crime maps. The inboxes became digital neighborhood watches. Homeowners who once second-guessed themselves began connecting across state lines. And something strange happened in Willow Glen. We didn't just go back to normal. We grew tighter. Clara now runs a neighborhood alert network. Darren teaches digital security to retirees every third Thursday. Lou, he's basically mayor without the title, walks his beat every morning, thermos in hand, waving to joggers and sprinklers and mailboxes like each one's a friend who made it through the war. And me, I joined a national task force as a remote fraud consultant, voluntary, no badge. Just a man who's seen the blueprint from the inside and refuses to let it be redrawn in someone else's life. But late at night, when the world goes quiet and my cabin is just shadows and ticking clocks again, I still think about her. Marlene. What she might be doing now. If she meant the warning or just wanted me to carry the guilt for both of us. Sometimes I think about replying to her letter, asking why she helped, even a little, but then I remember the sandwich, the smirk, the phone in her hand as she called 911 and turned me into the invader. And I know I don't need answers. Some questions are better left unanswered. Because closure isn't something people give you. It's something you build from the ashes. Brick by quiet brick. The cabin is different now, more secure, less innocent, but still mine. That matters because they tried to take something intangible from me. The rightness of walking through my front door without second-guessing it. And now, every time I hear the latch click behind me, I feel something deeper than ownership. I feel earned. This place wasn't just bought, it was defended. And I'll keep defending it, not because I'm paranoid, but because I remember what it felt like to lose it without ever handing over the keys. Last week, I got another call. Unknown number. I didn't answer, didn't need to, because whoever's still out there watching, they know now. I'm not scared of being a target, but they should be scared of making me one again. And maybe that's the real ending, not revenge, not victory. Just a man, a home, and a story that turned into armor. One I carry now, not to remember what happened, but to make sure it never happens again. Because the truth is simple, the most dangerous people in the world aren't the loudest, they're the ones who know how to knock and make you believe they belong. So if someone like that ever shows up at your door, would you recognize the lie? Or would you invite them in?